Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Baldfather Bets after a multi-month hiatus. We are going to take a look today at, now that we've gotten through spring practice for the most part, there's a few teams that are finishing up this week, but now that we've gotten through spring practice, a few of the college football futures that we like in this upcoming season. Most of the books now have out national championship odds, odds to make or miss the college football playoff, conference title odds, and then win totals over under for the teams. It varies at different books. For the most part, FanDuel is usually the first one to release those in terms of a national landscape. If you're at a location which you have a physical sports book that you can go to, you can usually get more odds at this point. But we'll give you essentially anything that you can get to as long as you have access to a national landscape sports book. The reason I wait till post-spring has really nothing to do with actually taking in any information in spring. It's all injuries. I just want to see, does anybody lose someone significant? Texas A&M lost probably one of their best linebackers. Georgia, at least for a period of time, lost one of their best edge rushers. These are the types of things that you want to see. Is someone going to lose a quarterback, a wide receiver, their top transfer, whatever it may be during spring, because that could impact ultimately what ends up happening. People who try to tell you that they have takeaways from spring ball, they're not showcasing anything. They're running drills at this point. Spring games aren't what they used to be. There's nothing that you can actually genuinely take away. Like, I don't care that Bryce Underwood went 3 of 9 in Michigan's spring game. It matters zero to me, and that the backup did well. I promise you, Michigan isn't dumb enough to bench Bryce Underwood for whoever the backup is. So anyway, let's take a start with a parlay that I like that is college football playoff odds to make. And you're going to see a theme here when I'm going positive on teams, and that's going to be that I believe they have a schedule that allows the least amount of things that could go wrong. That doesn't mean that I think that they're the most talented teams. For one of these, I do think they're one of the most talented teams, but it just means that the probability that they miss is very low. The probability that they lose 3 games if they're in the SEC or the Big Ten is very low, and the probability that they lose 3 games if they're Notre Dame is very low. ACC and Big 12 is a bit different. We're actually going to stay away from the 2 favorites in those leagues either way, and I'll explain why. But I like a 4-team parlay to make the college football playoff. That's Notre Dame, who is essentially a lock to get in. If Notre Dame goes 10-2, they'll be ranked inside the top 12, and there are not, quite honestly, there isn't 2 losses on Notre Dame's schedule. There is 100% not 3 losses on Notre Dame's schedule this year. I think that's why you're seeing a lot of their odds to make the playoff at like minus 650. So put that one in the parlay. Next are 2 Big Ten teams, Indiana and Oregon. I don't love that I'm taking 2 teams from the same conference. I don't necessarily love that I'm taking 2 teams that play each other. But outside of that, it's hard to get to 3 losses for either of these teams. Indiana's going to have excellent coaching. They have a pretty easy schedule for Big Ten standards. They bring back a few key pieces while adding exactly what Cignetti's formula is out of the portal, which is experience. He brought in players at positions who have the most amount of game snaps, game starts, game reps of anyone in the country at their position. And if you really look at what Indiana did last year, that's exactly what they did. This is a conversation for another day, but Indiana ran probably the most basic offense to win a national championship of the 21st century. It's a high school RPO offense, but they relied on the fact that Mendoza single-digit times made the wrong read in the RPO. They were second in the nation in terms of least amount of penalties. They didn't run the wrong routes. They didn't drop balls. They didn't fumble. They weren't offsides. They didn't have holding calls. And with that, they were able to execute. Part of that is having older players. Part of that is having people who've seen so many things. On defense, they ran very basic defense, not a lot of exotics, but they were always in the right place at the right time. So the formula in terms of what Indiana brought in players-wise matches to the formula of what Cignetti likes to do. The other one is Oregon. So Oregon is one of 2 teams who by far and away have the most talented rosters. The only other team that come close to these two is Ohio State, but even them, they're a little bit of a drop off. On top of that, Oregon also has a pretty easy schedule for Big Ten standards. Just like Indiana, it's very difficult to see Oregon getting to 3 losses with the schedule that they have. A trap game for them that if you're going to get tripped up is at Oklahoma State. I think it's like the second week of the season. We're going to come to Oklahoma State here in a little bit. Boone Pickens Stadium has one of the highest field temperatures, and we're talking about a game that's going to be in September. That's difficult for Pacific Northwest teams who aren't really used to that. Plus, Oklahoma State brings in one of the best transfer classes because they are exporting the North Texas offense to Oklahoma State. That game could get tricky. It's also following a opener against Boise State at home. So Oregon will have to showcase some of their playbook in week 1 that Oklahoma State will be able to watch film on. That's key when Oklahoma State will not have to do so in week 1. So you're essentially Oregon's preparing for the Oklahoma State team by watching Eric Morris and the North Texas team from last year. And then the last team that we're going to put in this 4-team parlay to make the playoff is the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia was cursed with maybe the hardest schedule in the SEC 2 years in a row. They won the SEC both years. They now have a cakewalk schedule for SEC standards and Georgia standards. Kirby Smart is Kirby Smart. They are maybe one of the most undervalued teams in college football right now. They're not even first to win their conference after, I think you can get them at like plus 330 to win the SEC. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too. They are also close to a lock. There is not 3 losses on that schedule, and if they make it to Atlanta, they lock to make the playoff at that point. The teams that make it to Indianapolis and the teams that make it to Atlanta are making it to the college football playoff. All right, so check mark. That's our first one. It's a 4-team parlay. You're gonna get somewhere around plus 200 for that. And then we like national title tickets. So as I talked about with odds to make the playoff, at this point in the season, we're looking at who is going to make the playoff for sure and taking out a ticket on them. For example, I think the 2 most talented teams are Oregon and Texas. In terms of roster, it's not all that debatable. Little bit with Ohio State, but not all that when you're looking at top to bottom talent, and then you're looking at the talent that's actually going to be starting out on the field. Oregon is a national title ticket that you want to have. Texas is not. We're going to talk about Texas in a second on another direction. Texas, along with Ohio State, play 1-2 some of the absolute toughest schedules in the country. You want to avoid those in terms of your national title tickets and in terms of your tickets to make the playoff right now, because you aren't getting halfway through the battle, which is just making the playoff. So national title tickets are going to be Notre Dame, Oregon, and Georgia. 3 of the teams that we just talked about in terms of odds to make the playoff. Again, big thing is we have a check mark that we're pretty guaranteed these teams are making the playoff. And then once they're there, we're talking about a Notre Dame team coached by Marcus Freeman, who's one of the most talented in the country. Loaded. Best secondary in the country by far. We're talking about an Oregon team who's going to be one of the 2 most talented rosters, a hungry Dan Lanning, and a hungry team who's been embarrassed in the quarterfinal and the semifinal now in back-to-back years. And then you're talking about a Georgia team who I cannot even... I live in Birmingham, Alabama. I cannot describe to you the drive within the SEC to win a national championship, and the lead man on that drive is Kirby Smart, and the lead team on that is Georgia. Until someone dethrones Georgia in the SEC, Georgia is Georgia, and them dogs is hell. If you watched the Ole Miss Georgia game last year, and if you've gone back and rewatched it too, I suggest you, if your takeaway from that game was, wow, Georgia's dead, you probably should not be betting on sports. So just close out that FanDuel account, close out that DraftKings account if that's what you think, because you don't really know what you're talking about. So Those are the 3 national title tickets from a value standpoint that are good to have. 2 other tickets, teams to miss the college football playoff. Texas at plus 150. Take a look at that schedule. Ohio State at plus 190. Take a look at that schedule. You want an individual ticket on both those teams to miss the playoff. First off, they play each other. So you're guaranteed to have a loss with one of those teams after week 2. You have Ohio State playing Indiana, playing Oregon, playing USC. Okay, they have the Michigan game. They go to Nebraska. Ohio State has a daunting schedule this year. Texas plays at Tennessee, at LSU, at Texas A&M. They have the OU game. They have a very sneaky November trip at Missouri. And, like I said, non-conference, Ohio State. There are 3 losses there if things do not go right for both of those teams. And at plus money, those are tickets that you want to have. Ohio State at plus 190 to miss the playoff, and Texas at plus 150 to miss the playoff. There's a good chance that one of them hits because they play each other. So if you put the same amount of money on both because they're plus money, well, if one of them hits, you made a profit. Okay, so college football playoff parlay, national title tickets, teams to miss the playoff. What else are we looking at? Georgia at plus 330 to win the SEC. Again, pretty much a lock to make it to Atlanta with that schedule. If they get to Atlanta, you're talking about a virtual home game for Kirby Smart and a 1-game sample size. Even if they do end up playing Texas, who Texas is more talented from a roster standpoint, do we really put it past Kirby to own Texas once again? I don't. And then one of the ones here that's actually become a favorite of mine, Oklahoma State to make the playoffs at plus 2,000. Again, you transplanted the number 1 offense in the country from last year, and you've transplanted it to a league where there is no difference in terms of defensive competition that they're playing in the Big 12 versus what Tulane faced in the AAC. You have juice. You have a fan base that when they get going shows out. You have a sneaky difficult place to play in Boone Pickens Stadium. Take a look at that schedule. It lines up pretty nicely for them in the Big 12. So let's say that they get to Dallas and then you're at a 1-game sample size against Texas Tech. Everyone is just kind of assuming that Texas Tech is reloading here. We'll see. They brought in a lot of pieces. They have a lot of money. I think Sorsby's a very nice upgrade at quarterback. That front 7 was a elite unit last year. You don't just check the box that you replace an elite unit, even if you like the pieces that you brought in. Okay? At plus 2,000, Oklahoma State's a ticket that you want to have to win the Big 12. I'm going to talk about 2 things that I did not put in any parlay or anything, and that is Miami to win the ACC and Texas Tech to win the Big 12. Just talked about Texas Tech a little bit. On top of Oklahoma State in terms of competition, there's other teams out there, like a BYU, who follows a very similar formula to what Cignetti has in Indiana in terms of experience. They're bringing back their quarterback. They should even be maybe a little bit better this year. You have Utah, who's going to have a resurgence now that they made the coaching change, brought in some new faces. Actually really like what Utah did this offseason. You have Oklahoma State. You have TCU. And you have a Houston team who quietly also made a lot of bumps this offseason. Then you have a West Virginia team who's now in year 2 of Rich Rod, who a lot of people seem to have forgotten about. I do not think it is an absolute guarantee that Texas Tech wins the Big 12 this year. Let's go over to Miami. I actually don't hate a Miami to miss the college football playoff ticket. The strength of that team was their offense and defensive line. They lost everything that made them elite there. I know people like the quarterback change from Beck to Mensa. I'm not immediately checking off that it's going to be an upgrade. I think people underestimate how well Beck played down the stretch last year. He played really well to start the season. He played really well to finish the season. There was a lull there in the middle, and I think people kind of remember that and think that was his season last year. He was pretty damn good in the playoffs, and he was very good to end the season. You think about the game like against Pitt. That offensive line was the best offensive line in the country last year. They're replacing essentially the entire unit. And then what made that team special were 3 and 4, Bain Jr. and Mesidor off the edge. They don't have them coming back. I know they brought in Wilson. There's a reason other teams passed on Wilson this offseason. He was actually quoted saying, well, I don't play run defense. I'm a pass rusher. We'll see how all that works out. There are other teams like an SMU in the ACC, like a Georgia Tech in the ACC, who could sneak up on Miami here and take this. I would avoid what, in my opinion, feels very much like trap tickets on Texas Tech or Miami to win their conference, or Texas Tech or Miami to make the playoff. That's it, guys, for college football futures that we like right now. We will be back at you again with an NFL video once the draft happens. People do ask me sometimes about draft pick, like betting on the draft. The only thing I would tell you is follow some of these mocks and some of these insiders, like with your phone in your hand with the notifications on, so the second something happens you see it, because that's the same thing the sports books are doing. There's money to be made if you can get a bet in as soon as you see news before the sports book can change their odds. Daniel Jeremiah and Peter Schrager are two of the ones that I like the most. They tend to be very tied in with teams on the draft, very tied in with the scouts for these NFL teams. And then obviously your normal newsbreakers like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport could come at you with something when something is known. Follow that stuff. Have the sports book pulled up on the tab open and immediately place something. If you see something and there's good odds on it, I'm talking about like plus money on something. That's really the only thing I can tell you about the draft. But we will be back at you again with NFL futures here in a little bit, a couple weeks from now, once the draft settles and some of the trade stuff settles. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate you. Cannot wait for football season, but this is fun to talk about futures. Make sure you hype up the video, like it, share it around, comment on it, give it some high points. You guys were a big part of growing the channel last year. We're going to continue to do the same thing as we head into football season 2026. Enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy the NFL draft this weekend.